Today is Wednesday, November 30th. I'm Corey Emanuel, and this is CMBG News. In today's top is headed to Ohio today to campaign in hopes that he will still receive a bid for America's top political office after having his reputation badly damaged by allegations for sexual misbehavior. Cain is one of the 8 Republicans fighting for the nomination to challenge President Barack Obama in the 2012 election. On yesterday, Cain found himself in what he called a firestorm due to an accusation of a 13-year extramarital affair with Atlanta businesswoman Ginger White. White said in an interview that her affair with Cain ended not long before the former businessman from Georgia announced his candidacy for the White House. "It was fun," said White, 46, as she described how Cain had bought her plane tickets for a romantic trip to Palm Springs, California. Cain went on television to deny White's claims even before the report aired. It was a faster and more deliberate response than he had managed when he was reported that 3 women alleged he had sexually harassed or groped them when he was the president for the National Restaurant Association. Although Cain said Monday there had been no affair with White, his lawyer issued a public statement that included no such denial and suggested that the media and the public had no business snooping into the details of consensual conduct between adults. Cain told his staff yesterday that with White's allegations, we have to do an assessment as to whether or not this is going to create too much of a cloud in some people's minds as to whether or not they would be able to support us going forth. Cain had slipped to 3rd place before the most recent allegations about his sexual behavior. Occupy movements on both coasts are seeing a decrease in protesters today. More than 200 were arrested in what is being called a peaceful sweep early Wednesday in Los Angeles. Hundreds of police officers swarmed the large camp at City Hall's South Lawn shortly after midnight, encircling the demonstrations in less than 10 minutes. By quickly establishing a perimeter, police managed to take control of the scene in the first moments of engagement. More than 200 people were arrested in the operation that involved 1,400 officers. In Philadelphia, police officers began to clear out a nearly 2-month-old encampment next to City Hall. They met little resistance from protesters, many of whom marched elsewhere in the city after the police arrived at the site. City officials had ordered protesters to vacate their tent encampment at the plaza by Sunday evening to make way for a pending construction project, but the officials decided to give the protesters extra time to leave, and they issued several orders to disperse before moving in on Wednesday. Syracuse coach Jim Boeheim is not concerned about losing his job. Boeheim said on Tuesday he was not worried about losing his job following allegations that his longtime assistant sexually fondled ball boys working with the team. "I've been here for over 36 years, and I have never worried about my job status," Boeheim said, following the Syracuse home game with Eastern Michigan. Boeheim made the comments during his first press conference since assistant coach Bernie Fine was fired on Sunday. Fans gave Boeheim a standing ovation at the start of the game, won by Syracuse. Fine, who worked with Boeheim for 35 years, was fired after ESPN aired audio of what is said was a telephone call between Fine's wife, Lori, and an alleged victim in which she appeared to admit to abuse of boys. Boeheim said he had not listened to the tapes of the call aired by ESPN. Fine has called the accusations against him patently false in every aspect. 3 men accused Fine of sexually abusing them when they were juveniles. When the investigation was done, we will find out what happened on my watch. Boeheim said, "Right now, we don't know. There are no charges or indictments and no action has been taken." The Syracuse abuse allegations have been compared to Penn State scandal, in which an assistant football coach was charged with sexually abusing 8 boys over a 15-year period. The Penn State scandal rocked the university and led to the dismissal of the university president and legendary coach Joe Paterno for failure to tell police about the alleged abuse. Conrad Murray was sentenced to 4 years in prison on Tuesday, but will only serve about half of that due to prison overcrowding. Dr. Conrad Murray was sentenced Tuesday to 4 years in a Los Angeles County jail, the maximum sentence allowed under the law in the deaths of Michael Jackson. However, he may only spend 2 years behind bars due to overcrowding. The judge set a hearing for January 23rd to decide on the prosecution's request that Murray be ordered to pay Jackson's estate and his children more than $100 million in restitution for the wage and profits lost as provided under California's Victim Bill of Rights law. The singer's estate estimates Michael Jackson's projected earnings for the 50-show O2 concert series to be $100 million, the prosecutor said, with nearly $2 million in funeral expenses and 10% interest added each year. The prosecution is asking the judge to order Murray to pay Prince, Paris, and Blanket Jackson more than $120 million in restitution. While it is doubtful that Murray, who is unlikely to ever practice medicine again, could very much pay that sum, it could prevent him from reaping financial benefits from any books, interviews, or film projects in the future. The search for a Florida woman continues today. Michelle Parker, 33, and mother of 3, vanished on November 17th, and her ex-fiance, Del Smith, is now a prime suspect in her disappearance. Smith, 40, the father of Parker's 3-year-old twins, is the last person known to have seen her. Parker and Smith appeared on an episode of The People's Court that aired shortly before she vanished. They argued about a $5,000 engagement ring that got lost after she threw it at him during an argument. Smith in May sued Parker in civil court about the time the episode was taped. In August 2009, Parker requested a domestic violence injunction against Smith. She said in court papers that she was holding their then 15-month-old daughter when he cursed at her and broke the passenger side window on her truck during an argument over the children. Parker told the court that Smith previously had been violent with her and had threatened to kidnap their children. She also said Smith had problems with drugs and alcohol. Police urge anyone with information about the case to call Crime Line at 1-800-423-8477. President Obama will speak on the American Jobs Act today. Obama's trip to Scranton today is part of a push by the White House and Democrats to extend the one-year payroll tax cut, which is due to expire at the end of the year. The tax cut saves a family that earns $50,000 a year about $1,000. Obama wants to increase the tax cut more than in 2012 to save an average family about $1,500. Obama's focus in Scranton will be to continue to push Congress to act to extend and expand the payroll tax cut that has given tax breaks to millions of families across the country this year, the White House said in a release. The president is scheduled to talk about the American Jobs Act at 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time today. You will be able to see live coverage of the speech right here at CMBG News. You're up to date this hour, and we'll be right back after these short messages. And welcome back to CMBG News. I'm Corey Emanuel. In world news today, China is set to hold its first AIDS walk on the Great Wall. The AIDS walk first took place in Los Angeles in 1985 to raise awareness of the epidemic and has since been held all around in the United States and in Canada. It will be the first such event in China where discrimination against HIV/AIDS patients is rife. The walk, due to take place in October 2012, is being organized by 3 non-profit organizations, including the government-backed China Population Welfare Foundation, and has been approved by Chinese authorities. HIV/AIDS sufferers have long been stigmatized in China, but increased government education has helped raise awareness. Organizers are limiting the walk, due to be officially launched on December 1st, or World AIDS Day, to 150 people. But they hope the movement will spread to other parts of China in the coming years. Central banks from the world's leading developed economies said on Wednesday they will take coordinated steps to prevent a lack of liquidity in the global financial system as the Eurozone attempts to find a way to stem its debt crisis. The U.S. Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the central banks of Canada, Britain, Japan, and Switzerland said in a joint statement that they had agreed to lower the cost of existing dollar swap lines by 50 basis points from December 5th. Other measures included setting up a bilateral swap arrangements between the central banks so that any bank could tap into additional liquidity in their own currencies if necessary. The swap arrangements are good through February 1st, 2013. In the United States, the Fed noted that banks were not having difficulty now getting funds in short-term funding markets. But if conditions deteriorate, the U.S. Central Bank said it has a range of tools available to use as a backstop and would deploy them as necessary. Teachers, nurses, and border guards protesting over pension reform staged Britain's first mass strike for more than 30 years Wednesday in a confrontation with the government over its austerity measures. Prime Minister David Cameron played down the impact of the strike, saying 40% of schools were open and the main London airports were working properly. As many as 2 million public sector employees have been expected to walk out over reforms that unions say will force them to work longer before they can retire and pay more for pensions than would be less. The Muslim Brotherhood's party said today its alliance was leading in Egypt's election, which gives the nation's oldest Islamic group a powerful parliamentary platform to challenge the authority of ruling army generals. State television said first-round results in Egypt's first free election since army officers ousted the king in 1952 would be issued on Thursday, a day later than scheduled because of a high turnout in the largely peaceful poll. The results, if confirmed and repeated in the 2 remaining phases of a 6-week election process, would position the Brotherhood to jostle for power with the military council that replaced Hosni Mubarak in February after a popular uprising. Progress towards democracy in the most populous Arab nation will help shape a region convulsed by popular uprisings against autocrats who, like Mubarak, often enjoyed Western support in part of their role in fighting Islamic militancy. Islamic parties in Morocco and Tunisia have come out on top of parliamentary elections in the past 2 months, although in both those countries they campaign as moderates. A court in Belarus sentenced 2 men to death Wednesday for carrying out a bomb attack at a metro station in central Minsk, which killed 15 people and wounded scores of others. Dmitry Konoval and Vladislav Konoval, both 25, were arrested 3 days after the explosion on a packed platform during the evening rush hour on April 11th. The prosecution said that 2 men, friends since childhood, had dabbled with explosives for years and were behind explosions in 2005 in their hometown of Videbsk and a separate bomb attack at Independence Day celebrations in Minsk, the capital, in 2008. Rights activists had urged authorities in the former Soviet Republic not to impose the death sentence. Belarus is the only country in Europe to have retained the use of capital punishment. Britain's Foreign Secretary on Wednesday ordered all Iranian diplomats out of the UK within 48 hours following attacks on the British embassy and a residential compound in Tehran. William Hague told the House of Commons that Britain had also pulled its entire diplomatic staff out of Iran for their society following the violence. The action marked the largest diplomatic retaliation against Iran since 1979 and follows a souring of relations between Tehran and the West amid deepening suspicions about its pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Mobs hauled down British flags, torched a vehicle, and ransacked offices in Tehran on Tuesday in retaliation for Britain's support of tighter sanctions against Iran over its nuclear program. The scenes were reminiscent of Iranian seizure of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in 1979. You are now up to date on world news. Stick around. We'll be right back after these short messages. And welcome back to CMBG News. I'm Corey Emanuel. In today's health news, is drinking apple juice doing more harm than good? An investigation into trace amounts of arsenic found in bottled juice has prompted advocacy group Consumers Union to urge the Food and Drug Administration to lower its standards for arsenic levels in juice drinks. The results of the study released Wednesday indicate that 10% of juices tested had total arsenic levels greater than the FDA standard for drinking water of 10 parts per billion, while 25% of juices also had lead levels higher than the FDA's bottled water limit of 5 parts per billion. Consumer Reports tested 88 samples of popular brands of grape and apple juice sold in the United States, including Mott's, Minute Maid, and Welch's. We were concerned about the potential risk of exposure to these toxins, especially for children who are particularly vulnerable because of the small amount of their small body size and the amount of juice they regularly consume, said Dr. Rangan, the Director of Safety and Sustainability at Consumer Reports. But children aren't the only ones at risk. Consumer Reports also analyzed the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's data on arsenic in the urine of men and women who were willing to report their food and drink consumption for a 24-hour period. An analysis showed that people who reported drinking apple or grape juice had on average about 20% higher levels of total urinary arsenic than those subjects who did not. It is now up to the FDA to establish an appropriate amount of arsenic acceptable in juice. For those of you still searching for those holiday gifts, Cyber Monday has been extended. Both Walmart and Amazon are calling the shopping spree extension Cyber Monday Deals Week. The amount of money spent on Cyber Monday was projected to be around $1.2 billion. These predictions show a trend that shoppers are doing more of their buying online. Both Walmart and Amazon feel that by extending the deals, they will reach a larger group of consumers and even some who may not realize the deals are going on. But if you are doing most of your shopping online this year, be careful. On Monday, federal authorities had to step in and shut down 150 websites for selling knockoff or pirated merchandise to unsuspecting online bargain hunters. That's up 68 websites from last year. The government seized the domain names for the sites and sold everything from fake replica professional sports jerseys to popular UGG boots. Some sites were just one letter off from the real retailer's domain name. With online shopping becoming even more popular, officials suggest you stick to well-known retailers and double-checking that you have the domain name correct. Like Black Friday, Cyber Monday brought in record sales this year. Online traffic was up 43% compared to last year. While we generally think of online shoppers as people sitting at a computer, this year more than 7% of online shoppers did so from their cell phones. That's up from 2% last year. This year, the most popular items for shoppers were electronics, such as flat-screen TVs and digital cameras. Switching over to entertainment news, first it was John Lennon's tooth, now an amplifier. An amplifier used by George Harrison during recording sessions for Beatles albums Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is expected to go for $80,000 to $110,000 at auction next month. According to the auctioneer, the amp's connection with the Fab Four was only recently discovered when an engineer who had been asked to fix it noticed the name George Harrison scratched on the amp. Subsequent research showed the amp to have belonged to Harrison, guitarist for the Beatles, who died in 2001. Very few amps used by the Beatles have come to auction before, and to find that one that was used on two such significant albums is truly rare and exciting, said Stephen Maycock, a consultant to Bonhams. Revolver and Sgt. Pepper came at the height of the Beatles' creative powers and are considered among the most important records in pop music. Well, if things go as planned, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg is set to become an even wealthier young man. Facebook is preparing for an initial public stock offering next year, while it looks to raise $10 billion to jolt its company to a value well over $100 billion, according to the Wall Street Journal. At a $100 billion valuation, the company started by the 27-year-old Zuckerberg in a Harvard dorm room would have double the valuation of Hewlett-Packard, the journal said. According to Reuters financial reporter Felix Salmon, the main reason for an IPO is to produce profit for the company. Zuckerberg is already estimated to have a net worth of $17.5 billion with the expected sale of the company's securities. This and more news coming up shortly right here on CMBG News.